Hello, BookTube. We're continuing with my 2023 library tour. Totally pointless, but we're going on with it anyway. And we are at the top shelf of the next custom-made Joe bookcase, and it is a mess. It's a little bit out of reach, not so bad, but it has crosswise books and uh, built-out double-stacked books because this bookcase is a very different proportion than the last one. This one I intentionally asked for it to be very deep, so that it has lots of shelf space even with a standard hardcover in there so that I could stack things on it. And I do, liberally. So we're going to try and I haven't cleaned any of this off. We're going to try and make the best of this. So there's one actual crosswise books, and then there's a bunch that are on the shelf. Do I have Feng Shui? I think I probably do. This is yet another P.G. Wodehouse anthology, The World of Wodehouse, or The World of Jeeves. This is all Jeeves stories, not anything else. And I've mentioned now a few times they should all be together, but I've mentioned now a few times how much I love Wodehouse anthologies. I almost sometimes think I prefer them to the individual books, which can, I think, quite often a novel by P.G. Wodehouse feels a lot like Racking a Butterfly, whereas shorter excerpts and whatnot, they tend to work a lot better. But that's the crosswise book, is The World of Jeeves. Yet another, there's a lot of Wodehouse in this room. Now we have to somehow make sense of these stacked books. How are we going to do that? Here is a box set of Tarzan novels with these great old Valentine covers. So that picture on the box is a detail from Frank Frazetta's beautiful cover for Tarzan of the Apes. And this just goes on from there. This has 1 through 6. And I'm a big fan of box sets like this. I absolutely love them because they are their own architecture. You don't need to worry about where they are. There's another box set here too, but there's something leaning against it. What is this? Oh, oh right. This is a version of the Iliad. This is a version of the Iliad. You will not find it in your bookstore. This was made for me by my surly houseboy when he was newly deposited from his birthing crèche. He was barely any annual cycles old. It starts off with this cover. It's a kind of a calfskin suede there, and you open it up like this. It's collage art, and you get to page number 1. B is for Briseis. And it just moves on from there. It's my favorite edition of Homer's Iliad. Then we have the other box set, which is The Lord of the Rings. This lovely golden thing that shows us all the greatest novels by J.R.R. Tolkien, all the great works by him in this box set, which again can go just anywhere because it's a box, so I don't have to worry about it. Then we have a little modern library thing. This is really nice. This is they took little excerpts from Shelby Foote's enormous 3-volume history of the American Civil War and made them into books. I think there were 3 of them. And this one I have is Stars in Their Courses, which is Gettysburg. Foote is very good on the 4 days of Gettysburg and the whole campaign that brackets it on either end. And I thought these are really neat, although this should not be in here. This is history. It belongs in another room. Okay, then this next one is, I think we found this just recently. I found this just recently. I think this was just last year. I found this hardcover copy of Long Day's Journey into Night by Eugene O'Neill. Just the play alone. In pretty rough shape. It was $1. It was clearly destined for being destroyed, and I saved it because I love this play. Absolutely love it. And it is another example of what I've been talking about, how canonical classics, I think we can agree that Long Day's Journey into Night is a canonical classic, they're slowly expanding to fill this whole room. And that's fine by me. It's absolutely fine by me. Oh, okay, this one we also, I keep saying we, I wish you people could come to the battle with me. I found this just recently. This is the art of National Geographic. A century of the original artwork that goes inside the magazine. Not necessarily the incredible photographs, but rather the nature artwork. There is one spot of ground at night, and there is the same spot of ground during the day. And so on and so forth all throughout here, covering a long time. So very good to see. Then what are we going to do? Well, then we just have the books themselves. So we have this little thing, The Medici by G.F. Young, in a modern library, a big modern library giant that I got years ago, and I've been sticking reviews in it. I really, really love this. Of all the accounts of the Medici, even Myers, which is so good. I still like this the most. I still like this book. Oh no, he did the Borgias. Who is it that I'm thinking about for the Medici? Is it Christopher Hibbert? Well, anyway, there have been many other accounts, many other books about the whole Medici family, and I've read lots and lots of them, but I love this one the most just for its rolling prose style. But it doesn't belong here. Much as I love it, it doesn't belong here. Uh, let's see here. Oh, okay. This is an odd thing. I have a copy of this that's very used. It doesn't have a dust jacket. It's heavily annotated. I use it all the time. It's one of the only books that's out that has a constant position near the fainting couch. But recently, just last year, I think I found a copy that's in much newer condition, and I got it, and I, curiously enough, have not been using it. I've been sticking with that older volume, which has all kinds of notes, all kinds of notations for me to help me zero in on what I want. This is the Oxford Dictionary of Literary Quotations. And I have, forever and ever, I had just this. That's what it looked like, and that's what it still does look like. Ordinarily, when I get a much newer edition of a work like this, I discreetly dispose of the older edition. But in this case, the older edition, I don't know, maybe it's this one that I should dispose of. I was overjoyed to see it when I eventually did find it, but maybe it's the one that I need to get rid of because I don't ever, it's here in this room, but I don't ever consult the one here in this room. Oh, okay, this is a great book. We have Bertram Fields. This is Royal Blood, his account of The Princes in the Tower. It's terrific, but it does not belong in here. It is simply a work of history about the two little nephews that King Richard III had murdered. Then we have William Manchester's great book, The Death of a President. There is our author and all of his ulcers. This is fantastic. It isn't just that one day in Dealey Plaza. It's also much broader than that, sprawling in all directions. Gives you a very human John Kennedy, which is probably why the Kennedy family was not all that crazy about the book. I love it. It might stay in here. I can make a case that it should stay in this room, even though it's just a work of history, because I love it so much. I've read it so many times. And there are a few other Kennedy books that are routinely dismissed by snobs as being written by Kennedy courtier history. And so they aren't any good. I defy the people who say that about some of these books to prove it. I am deeply interested in the Kennedy administration, but I have no more affection for courtier books than they do. And I'm not that easy to fool. So I'd love them to prove it, but I've issued that challenge to many of them. They can't ever do it. So, okay, then we have classical history. This is Poets in a Landscape by Gilbert Hyatt, which has, where he goes to all of the places that are mentioned by the great Roman poets and sees what they look like today and tries to find their exact correspondences in the poets' works. And also, along the way, discusses those poets very feelingly, quotes from them, all sorts of fun stuff. Okay, then we have a version. This is from Academic Press, I think, right before we started talking to each other. When did you come out? When did you come out? 2015. Yeah, so right before we started talking to each other. This is Richard Lansdowne's edition of a new selection of the letters and journals of Lord Byron. Pretty thing from Yale. Oxford. Pretty thing from Oxford that I knew I wanted to keep. I knew I wanted it in this room as soon as I saw it. Okay, then we have a hardcover of Tolkien's The Silmarillion with this original design there that I love so much. I have the mass market paperback with this cover illustration, and I have a mass market paperback with a later cover illustration, and I have a deluxe hardcover of this, and I have two different e-versions of this. Yet I have this one. Yet it is just sitting here. Well, what would a library tour be without Paul Marin and his cheekbones? This is Marry Me If You Dare by Alyssa Clark. One of the rare romances in this room that is strayed away from the romance bookcase, probably because it's a trade paperback. It's the larger size. But it still had to be in this room, beyond a shadow of a doubt. Then we have the great Otto Penzler, great editor. Otto Penzler, if his name is on an anthology, get it. If you're at all curious, get it. And this is a book of his, I think this is one of the only ones. Oh no, there have been others, haven't there? It's tough to leave an Otto Penzler anthology out of this room, but this is one of my favorites. This is Biblio Mysteries. Murder mysteries set in and around the world of books and writing and publishing, and he has such an ear for it. Like I've mentioned with him before, in the course of this room, one of the great things you get about an Otto Penzler anthology is he's not just box ticking. You're gonna find authors in there that you don't know, and that's a thrill because then you can come to know them if they really work on you. Then we have Andrew Pettigrew. This is his book Library, A Fragile History, a big history of libraries throughout American history. This came out. I don't remember. When did you come out? I think last year. Yes, 2021. And I had an excellent review of it by one of my freelancers at Big Canoe News. Did an excellent review of this book. I loved it. Thought it was really, really good. I think I wrote about it myself somewhere. Let's see here. Oh, and then a volume of Robert Louis Stevenson. I don't know why I got this. Well, I know why. I love the books that are in it. I don't know why I got this particular edition, because it is going to fall apart. It was part of a numbered set. It was a whole shelf of Stevenson. And the reason that they look so bad with these labels that are flaking off, and believe me, they were flaking off when they were new, 100 years ago. When did you come out? You're 100 years old if you're a day. Oh, but if it's privately printed, it might not tell me when it came out. I think this came out in the 1920s. But the reason why this multi-volume whole shelf set of Robert Louis Stevenson looked this way when it came out in the teens or the 20s is because you weren't going to leave it this way. You were going to pay to have it rebound. The whole set was going to be uniform rebound. The Rattle years ago got a whole set of these that weren't. Obviously, they weren't rebound. And I got this because this is his two great books, Familiar Studies of Men and Books and Literary Papers. And Familiar Studies of Men and Books is unbelievably good. Just unbelievably good. So good that I am not going to repeat myself and say that it does not belong in this room. It probably does. But probably not in that edition, because that edition is just going to fall apart. So I'm not going to indulge in revamping things now. We're just going to put these right back where we found them. Right back up on the shelf. And worry about their placement later. We're going to worry later. Instead, as a rare treat, here we'll put the box sets back up there too. As a rare treat, we're going to move on to the next shelf. Let's move on to the next shelf, which is again has crosswise books and also double stack books. Well, the only crosswise book is this, Enjoyment of Laughter by Max Eastman. Here in a rare shot wearing clothes. And this is him going through jokes and visual cartoons and explaining them. And the usual dictum is that if you have to explain a joke, it's not funny, and that no attempt to explain a joke will work. Neither of those is true. In Max Eastman's case, he loved doing it, and he's really good at it. So this becomes a really interesting just examination of how humor has changed over 3 centuries. Just that dictums like those were made to be broken, and this book does them. I was very happy to find it. You don't usually see any of his books out in the wild. Okay, then we have another classic that is filling this room. This is the Poems of Catullus. So you have the poem. Let's see here. You have the poems, and then you have tons of annotation, just as much annotation as I've ever seen Catullus get, which is mother's milk to me. Oh, then a murder mystery for our March Mystery Madness. We have The Dogs of Rome by Connor Fitzgerald, a Commissario Alec Bloom novel that I really liked. And a friend of mine was at, I think, the Strand and wanted, is there anything I can look for? And I said, if you could, go to the murder mystery section and get me a copy of this book. Because I had read it from a library. I think I'd read it from the Boston Public Library. And it never occurred to me, with such a stylish cover, it never occurred to me that the edition that my friend would get would have a different cover, but it does. It does. And so, it was trucked all the way to Boston and I didn't want it. But I found this, of course. Used bookstores always provide. And then we have travel literature for S&M Journeys. Mark at Book Time with Elvis and I are doing a booktube event forever on travel writing. This is a great example of that. We've seen this guy before in this room, I believe. This is H.V. Morton, and this is A Traveler in Rome. I think we saw, what did we see from him? A Traveler in somewhere. Well, anyway, he did a whole series of books, A Traveler in Wherever. And they are wonderful. They are chatty and delightful. And oh, okay, well, I know where I got this because This has the little handwritten receipt here. There used to be a used bookstore just outside of Boston proper that had a little old lady who was the register. They didn't have a register. Instead, she sat there with a pad of paper doing her sums. So you would bring up all your books, and she had to just add them up for you. And if she got it wrong, she started over again. So you just had to appreciate the charm of it because it wasn't going anywhere. Let's see, and then we'll do the books on the shelf, and then we'll stop there. I don't mean this to go on forever. Okay, so this is a work of history. It's polemical history, though, and it belongs in here. It definitely belongs in here. This is The Friends of Richard Nixon by George Higgins, who is largely forgotten now, except for his novel, The Friends of Eddie Coyle. And that might even be largely forgotten. It was a runaway success. It's the reason why this book is called The Friends of Richard Nixon, because it's meant to echo that book. But this is nonfiction. This is about the person and the henchman of the man that everybody who was not a nut job confidently said was the worst president the United States had ever had or ever would have. That's where I kicked myself. That's where I went wrong. I said the worst one we've ever had or ever will have. And I was wrong about that. Nixon is now far, far, far down the list. But this is full of great prose. Now, every time I pick this out, I always read the same passage, and I want to read it again because it's just so good. Higgins was such a great writer when he was able. None of them suspected Mr. Nixon of obstructing justice. Consequently, they did not suspect his lawyer, Mr. Dean. There were, as a matter of fact, plenty of people who said or strongly implied that the president was doing exactly that, and he was. But the people who said it could not prove it, and the people who could have proven it were busy helping him do it. This is a delight, I have to admit. I haven't reread it in a while because it's a little bitter. It's a little bitter to read an account of this. Goes into the deep depths of Nixon's depravity. And it's a little bitter to read a book that goes into those depths and come away thinking, boy, how good we had it. That is a little weird. So I haven't gone back to it, and I doubt very much that, I mean, it's reflex to say the presidential election of 2024. That's not what it's going to be. But we don't have a word for what it's going to be. It's doubtful, though, that process, whatever we're going to end up calling it, whatever history ends up calling it, is going to make me want to go back to this book, but I keep it anyway. Then we have a great anthology of letters, just a fantastic collection of letters, One Art, by the great American poet Elizabeth Bishop. This has no poetry. This is just letters, and it is unbelievably beguiling. You wouldn't think it. It's a huge letter collection. You wouldn't think it, but it is. It's amazingly good. Oh, all right, great. Then we have the Audubon Book of True Nature Stories, illustrated by Walter Ferguson. I love these old things. I absolutely love them. These just reprint stories from, well, that was the cover illustration, wasn't it? You're already getting that. Oh, look at that. Chickadees at a bird bath. It just reprints stories from Audubon magazine. But the back issues of Audubon magazine are gone. No one thinks about them anymore. And there's some truly wonderful writing captured in those pages. So always happy to see. I know they did another one, at least one, that I've never seen, but I'll grab it when I do. Then we have another anthology. This is 50 years of Borzoi books, put together by Clifton Fadiman and his team. Big, fat, deckled-edged thing of stuff from all the books that came out with the dog colophon. And since Blanche Knopf had a real taste for continental literature, she really thought that Americans could be less provincial in their reading and did a lot to change that fact. More than any single other person did, I would argue. This has a lot of other stuff. It has a lot of people in here. Conrad and Eliot and Learned Hand, Camus. Samuel Eliot Morison is in here a couple of times. Mencken is all over this book. Eleanor Wiley is all over this book. Just a wonderful anthology. It really does answer any mood, any need that you want. Okay, then we have a huge work of history. I love it, but I don't know that it belongs in here. I do love it. I love it more than most of the works of history that I have. But that doesn't mean it belongs in here. I'm supposed to love all my books, right? This is Dermot McCullough's enormous history of Christianity, the first 3,000 years. Mine is absolutely full of clippings. I put a clipping almost every week in this thing. I love this thing. I go back to it all the time. Believe it or not, even though it is, let's get the total, 1,100 pages long. Anything that you're thinking about a huge 1,100-page history of Christianity is wrong. If you're thinking that it's a block, that it's dead, that it's dusty, that it's inert, you're dead wrong. This is so good. It is so readable. It's an undertaking. It's a commitment for most readers, but even so. Then we have a murder mystery for Mystery Madness. This is Murder on the Appian Way by Stephen Saylor in an ex-library, or no, is this signed? Yes. I was very happy to get this in hardcover. I've read through it until my paperbacks fall apart. It's my favorite of the Gordianus the Finder murder mystery novels set in ancient Rome. By far. I mean, by a wide margin. I like it more than all the others. And every time I've ever seen a hardcover of it, it's been in really bad shape. I gather that's because a lot of people also consider it their favorites. But the Brattle got, a couple of years ago, they got a massive collection of signed books from a dealer for whom that was his fetish. He did not care about the books. He cared about getting as many people as he could that were involved with the book, tracking them down and getting them to sign it. I can just picture him bringing just armloads of books to a table. And that's the downside, is that you're crawling around in somebody else's neuroses. But the good side is that it was a wide-ranging collection of books that nobody wants. The point is that for him was to get it signed by someone who was involved with it. Not always the author, sometimes the editor, an illustrator. But it meant that a huge flood of books, some of which I wanted in hardcover, he carefully covered them and whatnot, kept them in pristine condition. This was a benefit of that neuroses on that guy's part. Then we have John Zada. This is a book that I absolutely loved. I found it hard to believe that I was actually seeing it. I had found it hard to believe that I was so lucky as to see a book like this. This is In the Valleys of the Noble Beyond, In Search of the Sasquatch, where he goes to the Pacific Northwest to talk to people. No condescension, no derision, no crazy UFO theories or anything like that. He goes to explore the human, you could say, sociological element of this phenomenon in the place where it happens more than any other place. And I don't know. I was hoping that I would love it, and I did. I loved it a lot, more than I thought I would. Let's get this out of here. Put this in here. So, of course, this goes in here. No doubt of that. No doubt of that. Okay, then we have a work of science fiction. We're almost done here. We have a work of science fiction that I love. Absolutely love it. I think it's great. I think it's one of the great science fiction novels. Why it's in here, I don't know. I guess Viraconium is in here. And John Carter of Mars. Maybe I love this almost as much as that. This is Perdido Street Station by China Mieville. This is incredible. This is the lovely American trade paperback that they put out, that with the deckled edges and the French flaps. Not often that you get a trade paperback in America that's this pretty. And I didn't know what to make of it. As soon as I saw the volume, I thought, well, somebody put a lot of work into this, so I will get it. And I was not prepared for much of what goes on here. At first, in the first few, dozen pages, I was mainly thinking of Viraconium, because this is very much an homage to Viraconium in its writing style and also in the way that it centers around a place. Instead of Viraconium, it centers around New Crobuzon. But then the plot started getting weirder, more violent, more beautiful, in weird, violent ways. Just what a previous generation would have called a trip. That's what this is. It's a trip. So maybe it does belong in here. That one does. Oh, and then a contemporary novel that I really, really recommend. This is by John Ray, and this is Lowboy. A novel about it's about a boy who has mental impairments that he doesn't know about. He needs to be supervised, and he escapes into the city. But it's mainly about his mother and her raw, unflinching courage, and the cop that helps her. It's more about that than it is about Lowboy himself. But I just love this. Absolutely loved it. Can't remember if I wrote about it, but I loved it. So it belongs in here, absolutely. And then we're gonna put everything back where it was. We're gonna put everything back on the shelves, because the sword of the Lord is going to go through this particular vineyard once we're done. So that is it. That is 2 shelves instead of 1. We'll move on from here next time and just continue with this bookcase. Maybe 2 more at a time, and see if we can speed this up a little. But anyway, that's it for now. I will see you then. I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.